Number 10. Instantly grabbing your phone. The first thing you reach for when you are finally alone is rarely just a habit. It is a confession. And for most people, that confession is this: I do not want to meet myself yet. The moment silence arrives, the hand moves almost automatically toward the phone. Not because something urgent happened, not because life suddenly demanded attention, but because inner stillness did. And that stillness feels heavier than any notification ever could. That tiny action reveals something deeply important. A person's first 10 seconds alone expose what their mind has been trying to postpone all day. Maybe it is stress, maybe it is emptiness, maybe it is unresolved emotion, exhaustion, loneliness, insecurity, or the uncomfortable feeling that when the outside world goes quiet, the inside world becomes impossible to ignore. So the phone becomes more than a device. It becomes an emotional shield, a fast escape hatch, a glowing wall placed between you and your own unfiltered mind. What makes this powerful is how innocent it looks. You tell yourself you are just checking messages, just opening Instagram, just seeing what is new. But often there is nothing new. The real function is not information, it is interruption. You are interrupting the possibility of feeling something real before it fully forms, before a thought can complete itself, before an emotion can introduce itself, before your own mind can say, now that everyone is gone, can we finally talk? And this is where the pattern becomes dangerous. Because when a person repeatedly escapes themselves in the first seconds of solitude, they slowly train their nervous system to treat aloneness like a threat. Over time, even peace starts to feel uncomfortable. Stillness feels suspicious. Silence feels like pressure. And the phone stops being a tool you use. It becomes a reflex that uses you. So when you instantly grab your phone the moment you are alone, the question is not what you are checking. The real question is what you are avoiding hearing. Number 9. Sitting in silence versus escaping. A lot can be understood about a person from what they do in the first few seconds after the world stops demanding something from them. Some people sit there, even if only briefly, and let the silence land. Others rush to escape it as if quiet itself is dangerous. And that difference is not small. It reveals the relationship a person has with their own inner world. Silence is never just silence. The moment external noise disappears, internal noise becomes audible. Thoughts that were buried under conversation, work, scrolling, and stimulation begin rising to the surface. Doubts return. Regret becomes louder. Emotional residue from the day starts asking for attention. This is why stillness feels peaceful to some people and unbearable to others. Peace is not always what silence gives you first. Sometimes it gives you truth before it gives you relief. When someone can sit in silence, even for a few seconds, it often means they have built at least some tolerance for their own mind. Not perfection, not total calm, just the capacity to stay present long enough to feel what is there without instantly running from it. That is a quiet kind of strength. Because being alone without distraction means facing yourself without performance, without audience, without the comfort of being temporarily occupied. But when a person escapes immediately, it does not always mean weakness. Sometimes it means they have spent so long surviving through stimulation that stillness now feels emotionally exposing. The silence begins to open doors they do not want opened. It reminds them of questions they have no answer for, feelings they have not processed, and parts of themselves they keep delaying. So they move fast. Music, videos, messages, anything to break the spell before self-awareness fully arrives. And that is the deeper meaning hidden inside those first 10 seconds. Your reaction to silence reveals whether you experience solitude as a place of contact or a place of threat. One response says, I can stay here. The other says, get me out before I feel too much. And over time, that difference shapes everything. Because the person who can remain with themselves learns who they are, while the person who always escapes may spend years never fully meeting themselves. Number 8. Opening random apps. Opening random apps in the first seconds of being alone seems harmless, but it reveals a lot about the state of your mind. It shows a person who cannot tolerate an unfilled moment without immediately handing it over to stimulation. You are not looking for something specific, you are looking for anything, and that is what makes it so revealing. The mind is not moving with intention, it is scrambling for interruption. One app opens, then closes, another appears, then another. Nothing satisfies because satisfaction was never the real goal. The goal was to avoid the moment before it became emotionally clear. Random app opening is often what happens when a person feels the first hint of inner discomfort but does not want to name it. Instead of sitting still long enough to notice what is rising inside, they begin bouncing between tiny digital doorways, hoping one of them will numb the restlessness. This behavior exposes a deeper fracture in attention. The mind has become so used to constant novelty that it struggles to settle anywhere long enough to feel, think, or reflect. It does not ask, "What do I need right now?" It asks, "What can I tap before silence catches up to me?" That is why the action feels so automatic. It is not really a choice anymore. It is a conditioned escape route, and the hidden damage is subtle. Every time you train yourself to break the first quiet moment with random stimulation, you weaken your ability to stay present with your own inner life. Thought becomes scattered. Awareness becomes shallow. Emotional clarity gets postponed again and again. What looks like casual phone behavior is often a sign of a mind that has forgotten how to pause without panicking. In that sense, opening random apps is not about curiosity. It is about avoidance, wearing the mask of harmless routine. Number 7. Looking for distraction. Looking for distraction in the first seconds of being alone reveals a mind that does not simply dislike boredom, but fears what arrives in its absence. The moment external demands disappear, inner material begins rising. A loose thought, a buried emotion, a vague tension, a feeling with no immediate name. All of it starts moving toward awareness, and before any of it can fully form, the person reaches outward for something to interrupt the process. That is why distraction matters so much. It is not always entertainment. It is often defense. This habit can look ordinary from the outside. Someone opens a video, checks a feed, starts touching objects on the desk, searches for music, refreshes a page, walks around, or invents a small, meaningless task. None of these actions seem dramatic, but together they reveal a pattern. The person is trying to avoid being mentally available to themselves. The distraction is not random. It arrives at exactly the moment self-contact becomes possible. And that timing is what makes it psychologically revealing. Over time, this behavior teaches the mind a dangerous lesson, that unoccupied moments are problems to be solved. Silence becomes something to patch over. Stillness becomes a gap that must be filled. A person can start to feel strangely restless whenever nothing is happening, not because nothing is wrong, but because they have lost the ability to exist without stimulation. The nervous system begins treating quiet like exposure. That is when distraction stops being a choice and starts becoming a reflex. The deeper cost is not just reduced focus, it is reduced self-awareness. Many truths only appear in moments with no noise around them. Sadness, dissatisfaction, inner emptiness, pressure, grief, exhaustion, even desire. These often first become visible in stillness. But if every quiet second is immediately covered with distraction, those truths stay blurred. So when someone instantly looks for distraction, what it reveals is not a short attention span. It reveals a person who has learned to escape the doorway through which self-understanding enters. Number 6. Thinking versus avoiding thoughts. The first few seconds of being alone reveal whether your mind moves toward truth or away from it. This is where the difference between thinking and avoiding thoughts becomes visible. Real thinking is not just having thoughts pass through you. It is allowing them to stay long enough to mean something. Avoiding thoughts is the opposite. It is feeling the first edge of an uncomfortable idea, then immediately pushing attention somewhere else before that idea can fully take shape. That is why this moment matters so much. When the room goes quiet, your mind often brings forward what has been waiting all day. A doubt you ignored, a truth you postponed, a feeling you covered with productivity, conversation, or noise. If you let it rise, you begin thinking. If you shut it down the moment it appears, you begin avoiding. And most people do not even notice which one they are doing because avoidance often disguises itself as normal activity. You check something, move somewhere, open something, start something, and just like that, the thought is gone before it ever became conscious. The deeper issue is not the thought itself. It is what your reaction teaches your mind. Every time you interrupt an uncomfortable thought before it forms, you train yourself to fear inner honesty. Your mind learns that reflection is risky, that certain topics must be escaped, that some feelings are safer when left unnamed. Over time, this weakens emotional clarity. You stop understanding yourself in deep ways because the moments where understanding begins are the same moments you keep cutting off. Thinking requires courage because thought is not always pleasant. Sometimes it forces you to see what is missing, what hurts, what needs to change, or what you have been pretending not to know. Avoiding thoughts feels easier because it protects you from immediate discomfort, but it also protects you from insight, and that is the quiet tragedy. The person who keeps avoiding their own thoughts may look busy, functional, even distracted in ordinary ways, while slowly becoming more disconnected from the life unfolding inside them. Number 5. Feeling discomfort in stillness. Discomfort in stillness reveals something many people spend years trying not to notice. They are not actually exhausted by life alone. They are exhausted by what becomes audible when life gets quiet. The moment movement stops, something unsettled begins to surface. A tension in the chest, a strange inner restlessness, a thought that does not fully form, but lingers. A feeling that has been delayed all day suddenly asking for attention. That is why stillness can feel so uncomfortable. It removes the cover. Most people imagine peace should feel natural, but peace is not always the first thing stillness gives you. Sometimes stillness gives you everything noise was hiding. It lets unfinished emotions come closer. It brings buried pressure into awareness. It strips away the constant stream of distraction that normally keeps you from noticing how tense, lonely, overwhelmed, or emotionally scattered you really are. So when a person feels discomfort the moment they are alone with no stimulation, that reaction is often not random. It is the nervous system meeting unprocessed material. What makes this powerful is how quickly people try to escape it. The body shifts. The hand reaches for the phone. Music goes on. A pointless task begins. Anything to break the sensation before it deepens. But that impulse teaches a dangerous lesson. That inner discomfort must be outrun, not understood. Over time, the person does not become calmer. They become dependent on interruption. They lose the ability to sit with themselves long enough to discover what the discomfort is actually pointing to. And usually, it is pointing to something real: emotional fatigue, hidden anxiety, suppressed sadness, pressure with no release, or simply the frightening realization that you have been functioning for so long that you no longer know how to just be. That is why discomfort in stillness matters. It is not proof that silence is bad for you. It is proof that silence is revealing something your distractions have been protecting you from. Number 4. Seeking noise immediately. Seeking noise immediately in the first seconds of being alone reveals a person who does not just prefer sound, but depends on it to avoid what silence might uncover. The moment quiet appears, they rush to fill it. Music, a video, background chatter, anything with enough presence to block the arrival of their own inner voice. On the surface, it looks like a simple preference, but underneath, it often reflects a deep discomfort with being left alone with unfiltered thought. Noise does something powerful. It keeps the mind occupied without requiring honesty. It gives emotion something to sit behind. It creates the illusion of company without the risk of self-confrontation. That is why so many people reach for sound before they even know what they feel. They are not always searching for entertainment. They are trying to prevent silence from becoming psychologically intimate. Because once the room is quiet, the mind starts speaking in a language distraction cannot fully control. For many people, silence feels louder than sound. Not because silence has volume, but because it amplifies what has been suppressed. Unfinished thoughts become clearer. Emotional tension becomes harder to ignore. The strange ache beneath daily functioning starts becoming visible. So the person turns noise on quickly, almost reflexively, as if protecting themselves from something entering the room. But what is entering is often not danger. It is awareness. That is the deeper meaning hidden in this habit. Immediate noise-seeking trains the nervous system to treat silence like a threat instead of a doorway. Over time, quiet stops feeling restful and starts feeling unbearable. A person may begin to lose the ability to sit with their own mind unless something external is buffering the experience. And that is where the damage becomes serious, because many of the truths that could help you heal only become audible when nothing else is speaking. So when someone instantly seeks noise, it does not just show restlessness. It shows a quiet fear of what their own silence might finally say. Number 3. Checking notifications without reason. Checking notifications without reason in the first seconds of being alone reveals something deeper than simple curiosity. It shows a mind that wants proof of connection before it is forced to feel its own isolation. The hand reaches for the phone, not because something important is expected, but because the possibility of finding nothing feels easier than sitting directly with the emptiness that silence may expose. It is not really about information. It is about reassurance. This behavior is powerful because it often happens without conscious thought. The person does not ask, "Do I actually need to check anything?" The action happens automatically, as if the mind has learned that the fastest way to avoid inner stillness is to search for outer signals. A message, a like, a missed call, a reply, any small sign that the world is still touching you. And even when there is nothing there, the ritual itself serves a purpose. It interrupts the inward turn before it can deepen. That is what makes this habit emotionally revealing. The notification check is often less about communication and more about emotional dependence on external interruption. Instead of allowing solitude to settle, the person seeks evidence that someone, somewhere, might be thinking of them, needing them, responding to them. Because if that evidence appears, even briefly, it saves them from having to fully face the quiet. And if it does not appear, they often refresh again, not because logic demands it, but because discomfort does. Over time, this creates a fragile inner pattern. Self-worth, emotional steadiness, and even momentary calm begin leaning too heavily on external signals. Silence becomes harder to tolerate because it contains no instant validation. Stillness feels empty unless something lights up on a screen. And slowly, a person can forget how to feel present without being pinged, noticed, or updated. So checking notifications without reason is never just a small digital habit. It is often a subtle plea for interruption, a reflexive attempt to escape the deeper question Solitude was about to ask. Number 2. Starting meaningless activity. Starting meaningless activity in the first seconds of being alone reveals a mind that cannot comfortably remain unoccupied, even for a moment. The person suddenly begins adjusting objects, cleaning something unnecessary, tapping through small tasks, opening tabs with no purpose, or moving around without any real reason. On the surface, it looks productive, harmless, even normal. But very often, the activity is not about usefulness. It is about avoiding the emotional weight of an unstructured moment. That is why this habit is more revealing than it seems. A meaningless activity gives the mind just enough motion to escape self-contact without looking like escape. It creates the appearance of doing something while quietly preventing something deeper from happening. The deeper thing is awareness. Because the moment a person stops moving entirely, they may begin noticing what has been waiting underneath the surface: tension, sadness, uncertainty, dissatisfaction, inner noise, or the simple discomfort of being with themselves with no distraction to hide behind. This behavior becomes especially dangerous because it is easy to justify. Unlike obvious scrolling or mindless entertainment, meaningless activity can disguise itself as responsibility. The person tells themselves they are organizing, checking, fixing, arranging, preparing, handling something small. But often, the timing reveals the truth. The activity appears exactly when silence opens up. It rushes in not because the task matters, but because the empty moment does. The task is functioning like camouflage for avoidance. Over time, this teaches the nervous system that stillness is intolerable unless it is immediately converted into motion. A person can become addicted to low-level busyness, not because life is truly demanding every second, but because inactivity feels too exposed. And when that happens, they lose access to the quiet spaces where reflection, honesty, and emotional understanding begin. So starting meaningless activity is not just a harmless habit. It is often a polished form of escape, a way of staying busy enough to avoid noticing what your inner life has been trying to say. Number 1. Avoiding eye contact with self, mirror behavior. Avoiding eye contact with yourself in the first moments of being alone is one of the most intimate forms of escape because it reveals that even your own reflection can feel too direct. A mirror does not just show your face. In certain moments, it feels like it shows your presence. And for many people, that is harder to face than they realize. They will glance quickly, adjust something superficial, then look away before real contact happens. Not because mirrors are uncomfortable by nature, but because self-recognition can be. There is something powerful about accidentally meeting your own eyes when no one else is around. For a second, the usual performance drops. You are not being watched socially. You're not presenting a version of yourself. You are simply there, visible to yourself. And that can trigger an odd kind of discomfort. A person may suddenly feel exposed, not physically, but psychologically, because eye contact with the self can create a brief moment of honesty that distraction usually prevents. That is why avoiding the mirror often goes deeper than appearance. It is not always about insecurity over looks. Sometimes it is about resisting the emotional weight of being fully present with yourself. Your own eyes can carry exhaustion, sadness, disconnection, pressure, loneliness, or the quiet realization that you have been moving through life without really checking in. Looking away becomes a way of delaying that recognition. It protects you from a moment that might feel too real. Over time, this small behavior can reflect a larger pattern. A person may become skilled at functioning, speaking, posting, working, and interacting, while quietly remaining distant from themselves. They can manage life outwardly while avoiding inward contact. That is why mirror behavior matters. The way you face your own reflection often mirrors the way you face your own truth. If you cannot hold your own gaze for even a few seconds, the issue may not be what you see. It may be what you feel when you are finally seen by yourself.